Welcome to the notes for H8-8 on synthetic division. We've already done a section in this chapter on just polynomial division using area models. This is just another form of polynomial division. It's probably a little bit quicker and faster than doing the area models, but there are some limitations. So as we work through it here, I will show you what those are. All right, so what you'll see at the top here, I've gone ahead and listed out the steps in case you forget what to do. You can go refer back to these steps, but I'm going to refer to them here as I'm working through the examples. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into number 1 here. All right, we've got, it says 2x to the third minus 13x squared plus 26x minus 24, and we're going to divide that by the quantity of x minus 4. So a couple things here. Remember, this first expression we have here is our dividend. And the dividend is always divided by the divisor. And remember, your answer would be the quotient. Now you'll see here to the right of the problem, you'll see we have this, right angle that's kind of drawn there. And then you'll see you have a bar down here. Okay, so that's kind of like the setup for our synthetic division. I'll show you how that works here in just a second. So the first step here at the top, it says, write the coefficients of the dividend so that the degrees of the terms are in descending order. And then it says, make sure to put a 0 in for any missing term. This first one that we're going to deal with here, you'll see here we've got a degree of 3, a degree of 2, a degree of 1, and then a degree of 0. So we're not missing any degrees. So we're going to take the coefficient from each of those here. I'm going to start out with my 2x to the third. I'm just going to list out just the 2. And then I'm going to leave a little space here, give yourself some room. We'll put the second coefficient, which is negative 13, right next to it. The next coefficient is 26. We'll put that here. And then we'll put negative 24 at the very end. Okay, so that's what that first step is asking you to do. Now, we're going to go into the second step. It says, write the constant r of the divisor in the box for x minus r. And then it has this here. It says you must be dividing by an expression in the form of x minus r, not like 2x minus r. So what that means here is, on r's here, we have an x minus 4. Now we use r because we know that if we set that equal to 0 and solved it, where x minus r is the factor, we know that the root for that would be equal to 4. So that's really what's going in the box. We're putting a 4 in this box up here. Remember, this is actually the root value, but we can't use this constant term if there is a coefficient on the x as well, and we'll get to those later on. So right now you'll see these are all just linear factors there that have just integer roots. All right, so we've done that second step. We put the 4 in there. Now what we're going to do here is go on to the third step. The third step states here, bring down the first coefficient. So we're going to take it here, and our first coefficient 2, we're just going to bring it down, and we're going to write it underneath the line down here. This is kind of like your equal bar, okay, at the bottom there. So the next step after that, we're going to take it here. It says multiply the first coefficient by r, and then write it under the second coefficient. So this was our first coefficient. We're going to multiply it times our r value, and then we're going to write it right underneath our second coefficient there. So obviously 2 times 4 is going to be 8, and so we're going to write that 8 underneath the negative 13. Okay, so the next step after that, here number 5, says add the 2 together. So we're going to take it and we're going to add the negative 13 plus 8, which is going to give us a negative 5, and we're going to write that right underneath here. So it's almost like we're adding, vertically. And then the last step there, it says that we're going to do is we're going to take it here and we're going to repeat steps 4 and 5 until we're all the way across. So I'm going to take this now. I'm going to take my negative 5, and I am going to multiply it times the 4, and then I'm going to write it underneath the 26. So negative 5 times 4 is going to be negative 20. I'm going to write it right here underneath 26. Now we're going to add those two together. 26 plus negative 20 is positive 6. And then positive 6 times 4 is going to give us 24. We're going to write it underneath that last coefficient up here. And then when we add those, you see we get 0. So when we're looking here at what is the answer going to be, one thing you always have to keep in mind here is once we get to this last coefficient, right, when we add these last two, this value we get down here at the end is going to be the remainder. This will always be the remainder. So in this case, we have no remainder. And then we look at these coefficients of our quotient. And they will always go in order by degree. So this is like a degree of 0, a degree of 1, and a degree of 2. Right? So it's like a degree of 2, degree of 1, and then our degree of 0, which means that this ends up being, this is a degree of 2, this is 2x squared. Then we have minus 5 times x to the first power, and then plus 6. And that is our quotient. When we divide our 2x to the third minus 13x squared plus 26x minus 24 by an x minus 4, our answer ends up being 2x squared minus 5x plus 6. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So anytime you need to try it or pause it there, if you want to try it and then check to see if you're right, please do that. Use the ability to fast forward, rewind, do whatever you need to do to make sure you're getting through it and understanding. So number 2 says we've got here x to the third minus 2x squared minus 25x plus 6, and we're dividing it by the quantity of x minus 6. So first thing we check here, right, this is just a linear factor where, 6 would end up being our root. And then over here, we have a degree of 3, we have a degree of 2, a degree of 1, and a degree of 0. So we're not missing any terms. So the first step, remember, write out the coefficients. We've got 1x to the third. We have a negative 2x squared. We have a negative 25x. And then we have a 6. If x minus 6 is the factor, the root here is going to end up being positive 6. So we're going to write that in the box. Then our next step, remember, was to take that first one and bring it down, write it down here. Now we're going to multiply 1 times 6, write it underneath the second coefficient. Add them, we get 4. 4 times 6 is 24. Add negative 25 and 24, we get negative 1. And then negative 1 times 6 is going to be negative 6. When we add those two, we get 0. Remember, that's our remainder at the end. So then we go back and we write this out as, this would be x squared plus 4x minus 1. And that's it. And like I said, it seems to be much faster, and a lot of people really like that. However, there is some limitations that I'll show you here in just a second. All right, so the next one we've got here, we've got our dividend is x to the fourth minus 10x squared minus 2x plus 4, and we're dividing it by x plus 3. So as we're taking this one and writing this one out, we've got here a degree of 4, a degree of 2, a degree of 1, and a degree of 0. So remember, we're missing that degree of 3. So we'll have to fill that in with a placeholder when we're writing it out. We've got 1x to the fourth. We'll put 0x to the thirds, negative 10x squareds, negative 2x's, and then a 4 at the end. Our root here would be a negative 3, and now we'll just continue the process. Bring down the first term, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply. And then on this one, you'll see here we end up with a 1 at the very end. So we'll have to end up with a remainder on this one. So now that we have 4 terms under here, remember this is still a degree of 0, degree of 1, degree of 2, and the degree of 3. So as I write this out, I'm going to say this is x to the third minus 3x squared minus an x plus 1. And now remember, this remainder is going to come into play. Right, we're going to take our remainder, and remember we put it over our divisor. So since it's positive, I'll say plus 1 over the quantity of x plus 3. Just like you did with the area models there in terms of the remainder. So take the remainder and put it over the divisor. All right, that was example 3. Let's do another one. And then we will spice it up a little bit. Number 4. We have 3x to the third plus 5x minus 1, and we're dividing it by the quantity of x plus 1. This would be a good one here for you to pause the video, try it, and then see if you get it right. Go ahead and pause it now and try it. All right, hopefully you paused it and you're ready to check to see if you got it right. With this one here, remember our dividend is on top. We're going to write out the coefficients as 3. We have no x squared term, so you have to put that 0 in there. We have a 5. And we have a negative 1. The root value here for x plus 1 should be a negative 1, and then we'll just go ahead here and work on it. Bring down our 3. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Add that to 0. Multiply. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. And then we add those together, we're going to get a negative 9. And that's going to be our remainder. So when we do 3x to the third plus 5x minus 1, we're going to end up with a 3x squared minus 3x plus 8. And then I'm going to put a plus negative 9 over the quantity of x plus 1. Now you could also write that as just minus 9 over the quantity of x plus 1. Either way would work.